Hi, and welcome to Katina's Corner. Today on the show, we'll be talking about what makes American literature American. Throughout the show, we'll be talking with some special guest authors who will discuss the books that they have written. Our first guest shocks readers with a novel that portrays a woman who strives to find herself and get out of the confines of her situation from the societal pressures. Please welcome Kate Chopin.
Hello!
Hello, how are you?
I'm great, and you?
I'm great, thanks. So tell me about your book, The Awakening. What's Edna like?
She's a strong and independent woman. She lives in a Creole society that has very strong stereotypes regarding the role of women and how they should act. In her community, she should be a mother woman, someone who idolized their children, worshiped their husbands, and esteemed it a holy privilege to efface themselves as individuals and grow wings as ministering angels.
She appears to have this change of status in her head throughout the whole book. What exactly does she do in order to achieve her goal of being an individual?
She feels as though she doesn't fit into the typical role of a mother woman. Society has trapped Edna and made her feel and do things that she doesn't believe in. She wanted to become an individual because she knew that she didn't fit in. However, unlike Mademoiselle Reisz, who isolated herself from the rest of society, Edna stands up to the adversity and pretty much does everything that society says she shouldn't do.
What are some of the things that she did?
At the beginning of the novel, she is guided by a strong example of a mother woman named Adele. Adele worships the mother woman life and tries to help Edna into the role. However, Edna does not want to accept this advice and does everything she shouldn't. The first thing she does to become an individual is changes the way she dresses.
What did she do differently in the way that she dressed?
Well, as the novel progresses, so does Edna's self-discovery and the layers of clothes she wore. Creole women at the time were supposed to dress very conservatively. They also wore a lot of white because there was a sign of pureness. However, even at the beginning of the novel, Edna seemed to be rebellious because she would wear white, but she would wear a vertical line of brown running through it, which is the first signal that she refuses to accept society's so-called rules of how to dress. Later, when hosting her weekly Tuesday reception, she's not wearing her normal clothing. Instead, she's wearing a handsome reception gown.
So once this happened, what did her husband Léonce think about this?
Léonce was quite upset. He felt that she was dressing decently and pure, but what made him more upset was that when he returned home that night and asked Edna if a lot of visitors had come, she had simply told him that she found the cards when she got home. He asked her about this, and she said that she felt like going for a walk and not accepting visitors that day.
That must have been a total shock for him. How did he really handle it, though?
He attempted to talk to her about it, but she wouldn't have it. As Edna tries to defy society and become more independent in the novel, she begins to stop listening to her husband more and more, but she really starts to defy him when she comes back from swimming for the first time, and she's lying in the hammock. Léonce keeps telling her to go to bed, and she refuses, and eventually she says, "Léonce, go to bed. I mean to stay out here. I don't wish to go in, and I don't intend to. Don't speak to me like that again. I shall not answer you." As a typical Creole woman, Edna is supposed to worship her husband and depend on him, but she takes her own independence and moves away to a pigeon house alone. She felt as though every step she took toward relieving herself from obligations added to her strength and expansion as an individual.
Ultimately, Edna decides to kill herself in the end. But why did you choose this ending opposed to her moving away or something less dramatic than her death?
Society has taken a toll on Edna, and she's come to her last wits. To the fact that she moved out to a pigeon house, she said she would give her life, literally, for her children, but she would never give up her soul because too many souls perish in its tumult. Edna was constantly fighting against societal and natural pressures of being a mother and a woman that don't allow her to be an individual like she wanted to. Suicide was the only option that Edna thought that she could free herself so she does not have to compromise herself for her newly found independence because society does not support her.
Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for today. Thank you so much for coming in.
You're welcome.
And we'll be right back after this commercial break. Our next guest is a man who wrote a play of a drama of emotional power and impact, according to the New York Post. He wrote a play, The Crucible. Apparently, just writing a play wasn't enough because he then went on to produce a movie based on his hit play. Please welcome Arthur Miller. Hi Arthur, how are you?
I'm great, and you?
I'm great, thank you. Now tell us, in your book The Crucible, everybody lived in a Puritan society. And so for the people who don't know what that is, can you describe to us what a Puritan society is?
Of course. Well, Puritans were liberty-loving and the individuals were restrained by law and courts. People were expected to pray and go to Sunday church every week and also pray daily. Otherwise, they would risk getting a fine or would be questioned about their morals. All aspects of their lives, such as law, economy, and industry, were perceived from the Bible, and many were not permitted to speak against it.
How is this topic relevant throughout the whole crucible?
Well, in Salem, the court and the church governed how people lived. All the Puritans had the same morals and listened to the courts. They went to church every Sunday and they prayed every day. The community as a whole functioned as one. Everyone was expected to live with the same morals and religious beliefs. Throughout the book, people lied to the court, saying that they had been part of the devil to get them out of trouble so they wouldn't be hanged. The girls noticed that this was working for everyone as they continued to lie their way through the trials in hope to get out of any trouble. They followed the rules of their community rather than telling the truth.
What were people's roles in the community? It seems as though having a good name was extremely important in this time. Why were they so concerned about having such a good name?
People were extremely worried about their reputations. Reputation was very important in the town of Salem. It was directly related to your name. It determined whether or not people would associate with you or whether or not they would do business with you. Reputation had to do with religion. If you attended church and followed the beliefs of your religion, it meant you were a good person.
Okay, it seems as though there's some soiling of other people's name throughout the play. For example, when Elizabeth tries to ruin Abigail's name when she figures out about the affair that she had with Proctor.
Yes, Elizabeth begins spreading rumors about Abigail, who gets extremely worried about what the community will start thinking of her. She yells to Proctor in the play, "She is blackening my name in the village. She is telling lies about me. She is cold, sniveling woman. You bend to her." She knows how important a good name in society is and wants to make sure that her name remains good as well as her reputation. So she's very worried that Elizabeth is going to start telling people.
And if people were to find out, what would happen?
People will no longer have respect for her or will want her to work for them. As we know, she had been out of work for 7 months, which is kind of a long time. In other words, she would have basically been shunned from the community, seeing as she was stepping out of the Puritan beliefs.
So would people start questioning their morals that they had?
Yes, people would definitely question her. Her family and the church she had previously been a part of, they would begin to question her background as well. Everyone in the community would hear about her very quickly, saying that nothing stays silent in the town of Salem.
Why is this such a big deal, though? Shouldn't people be able to live their lives how they want?
Yes, they should be allowed to do whatever they want and whatever they believe in, but society has become so strict that it's really taken a toll on people. I over-exaggerated in a play, but that's what the world has become. I had Danforth, one of the major judges in the story, make a great point. That is, you must understand, sir, that a person is either with this court or he must be counted against it. There is no road in between. He's basically saying that you're all against or all for the court, which governs the society at the same time. There is no in between.
In John Proctor's dramatic ending scene of this play, why is he so against signing the paper? If I recall, he yells a lot about being able to keep his mean. Can you explain this a little more for me and the audience?
He, unlike most of society, knows that rules are made by the religion and court, but he obviously doesn't agree. He agrees to confess, and he does, but he won't sign the confession paper because he feels that's giving his name to a lie.
Well, that's all that we have for right now. Thank you so much for coming in.
Of course, thank you for having me here today.
And after this, we'll be back with one more of our awesome authors. Lastly, on Katina's Corner, our last guest for the evening is a man known for his controversial literature regarding racial themes. Please welcome Mr. Richard Wright. So, how are you today?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. So tell me, when you were casting Bigger, what did you want him to be like?
I created Bigger like a typical black man would have been treated back then. Like most blacks, he would face the adversity of an unequal society where whites have most of the power, if not all the power, and blacks are very mistreated. For example, Bigger and his gang rob blacks all the time, but they fear robbing a black man because we ain't never done nothing like. They'll look everywhere for us for something like this. He and his gang know that how society views blacks and that they'll be the first to take the blame because whites are protected by the authority. For the most part, they're pretty reserved and polite, but I really tried to focus on the creation of the characters that Bigger interacts with, particularly the Daltons.
So tell me a little bit more about the Daltons.
They're your typical well-to-do upper-middle-class family. They treat Bigger with an uneasy feeling, though, because of the color of his skin.
It was a real big shock to the readers that a black boy was working for such a rich white family during this time. Why does this come across as such a shock, though?
In the 1900s, it wasn't very common for blacks and whites to intermingle the way that Bigger does with the Daltons. Writing this book was interesting because the entire time I was kind of thinking to myself whether or not this book would have been different if it had been a white man who murdered a black woman and what the outcome of that trial would have been.
And because Bigger is black, how does that affect him overall within the society?
Throughout the trial, society played a huge role in the outcome. The white community rallied for the death sentence on Bigger Thomas. Society is the biggest reason for Bigger's actions. He was born in poverty because of the racist real estate that caused him to have to live in poverty. He feared the Daltons because he sees white people as a mass of people rather than individuals. Bigger's fear caused him to kill Mary, and it also caused his violence towards Gus and Doc.
So that's all that we have for tonight. Thank you again for coming. See you next week for Katina's Corner.
That's all, folks.